you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can you first tell us a little bit more about Zhang Guimei? What did she say, and why her words carry so much weight?
Well, in a nutshell, she was known as China's Mother Teresa in the field of education. I mean, this year, Principal Zhang Guimei was elected National Outstanding Teacher by the Ministry of Education of China, which is an honor to award her dedication to the education. I should point out it's not only because she's a great teacher, but also her pivotal role in helping girls from rural areas to, quote-unquote, fly out of the mountains and never come back. In 2008, she finally managed to set up the first free female high school in China after years of painstaking efforts, and of course with the help of local government. What's worth noting is that since its foundation, Huaping Female High School has changed the fate of over 1,800 female students from nearby poor villages. And by doing so, rural girls powered with education can lead a better life. And her life-altering deed was reported nationwide later, so she's kind of a well-known public figure. What happened was that she rejected her former students' donation to the school because she despised the students for being a full-time housewife then. So during an interview, she said not only she rejected the money, but also she said, get out to the students in front of her and her husband. So that's why it generated a heated discussion online.
Well, those remarks were indeed controversial. We have seen discussions about this trending on Chinese social media. How are the general public reacting to her comment?
Well, we know that she always has the girl's best interest at heart, which is precisely made her remarks so controversial. People start wonder if this is the right value to approach, if this is the right value to be passed on to younger generations. And so it sparked quite some heated discussions online, and people ask, is full-time housewife a waste of education resources? And they made a polling about it. So some said, well, they also echo with the principal's remark on never rely on a man as well. They think women should always have their own income instead of an independence of their husband. After years at home, one might fail behind the society. So some of them even shared their rather disturbing personal experiences with husbands having affairs with other women while they were the full-time housewife. Others hold the opinion that being a housewife is merely a personal choice and the principal has no right to interfere with. People also argue that what the principal hates is not the female being housewives in general, but only her students being so. These girls from remote villages can't really afford to lose. Even though the high school is free, many parents of these girls still want them to stop studies and get married early. So becoming a housewife is a risk that she doesn't want her students to take. And the poll also encouraged people to write down their own ideas. So some voices also called for the society and the government to pay more attention to full-time housewives who need more understanding and perhaps more importantly, more security.
Well, you've mentioned about this poll online, but in your opinion, which side are you on with the large audience? What do you think of her view on not accepting the donations from the housewife?
Well, frankly, I do think some of the comments online went a little bit too far, and they have taken out Principal Zhang Guimei's remark out of her context. So in the interview, she also raised her points. She explained that they have overcame all the difficulties to make sure that the girls could start a new life in the cities instead of getting married at 18. And for that, she was extremely disappointed when she learned that the student chose to become a housewife. So I think on that specific part, I understand where she came from and why a principal in her shoes may react like that, because she poured a lot of attention to these girls and really wanted them to be somebody in the future. If they just settle for a housewife, then one could even say her effort has gone to waste. However, if we look at this question with a more nuanced and holistic point of view, I beg to differ. I think it's a personal choice, just like some of the netizens said, especially when you choose to become a housewife or a house husband. It's just like any other full-time position by its own real name. It's a job. What we need is respect and understanding and appreciation for those housewives and house husbands. I understand it's quite conventional to think that women were the compromised party, but we also have to see the bigger picture. It's vital that the choices come from their hearts, men or women, and should absolutely be free of coercion or even intimidation. Without those common grounds, we may never see eye to eye, and that's what the principal Zhang Guimei, other netizens, and me worried about.
Okay, but with the backdrop of COVID-19, we are actually seeing a growing number of housewives or house husbands now. What do you make of this phenomenon, and how are people coping with that?
Well, that's a great question. That's exactly what we should look into and be very careful with our attitudes, particularly as such a difficult and extreme situation, really. You see, with the pandemic, besides the pre-existing group, some of the housewives or house husbands already stayed at home, there is a growing concern of the other people joining the crowd. And what concerns people is they might be forced to arrive at a conclusion that one of them needs to stay in. Well, why? I can think of two imminent scenarios. One of them might get laid off due to the gloomy economy. Alternatively, someone needs to work at home. Now, if they have children, if they have small children, schools are closed in some areas, so they have to juggle earning and caring, and sometimes these unpaid caring labor, they may fall heavily on women. Because of the existing structure of the workforce, it's also about practicality. They have to discuss questions like who is paid less and who has the flexibility. So I think in that situation, dual-income couples might suddenly find themselves facing the questions of one being the homemaker and the other being the breadwinner. So in this situation, it's like a new norm that the couples need to figure out what they can do about it. And also in the meantime, the government is also trying to crowdsource more platforms or more channels so that the parents can know that someone is backing them up. And also they can have more channels to try to find a real job or a real gig at work. So that is the new norm that we all have to cope with. And that calls for the deeper understanding from the general public to know that this is the new norm and we need to learn to live with it. And this thing will pass and we can't harm our relationship, especially domestic relationships. Sometimes only those people who are in it know what is going on. And in that scenario, we really call for more understanding between people. That would help in the long run.
Okay, Wang Luoying, thank you so much for your insight. And that's all the time we have for this edition of World Today.